want to welcome you to our 17th monthly webinar. And it's my privilege to be hosting it on the very important, I must say, somewhat tricky topic of vulnerability, although I'll share with you more than only vulnerability. And you might ask, why the picture? Why the heart and the brain? Well, it's simple. In my mind, vulnerability is very much around linking your heart to your brain and then actually let your brain kick in gear and do something about it. Like, for example, what I want to say and what I want to share. Right, again, just bear with me for another couple of minutes while I'm admitting people. To kick off, just quickly, for those of you who don't know, I head up the Southern African Leadership Development and Training Institute. We believe in growing leaders and impacting results. We also have a company called Soft Skill Solutions, and if you go onto soldati.com, click on the Soft Skill Solutions tab, you will see what that is all about. Mariette is also on the call with myself and Trevor. We are presenting these soft skills masterclasses, and I would like to invite you to register for those. And hopefully through doing that, we can also add value to your lives as far as those topics are concerned. These are the topics that we are specifically focusing on at this point, but in 2024, we're looking at rolling those topics out. Right. Just a couple of housekeeping matters just quickly. First one is, like I said, the session is recorded. Thank you for joining us. Please mute or stay on mute unless you ask a question. I will aim for 25 minutes of facilitation or discussion. And as always, I would prefer it if you ask the questions at the end. But if you really disagree with me, by all means, chip in and unmute. Then I'm admitting the last person. Just quickly mail me if you want to be added to the distribution list. Okay, so if you don't need to wait for somebody else to forward you the invitation, or you don't need to register, I don't mind if you mail me. I'll add you to the distribution list. And then just mail me also if you want a copy of, urgently need a copy of the recording. If you can't wait till next week when it will be loaded under the Insights tab on our website as a vlog. And please mail me, most importantly, with future topics. I'm hungry to explore more topics that you feel might add value to your lives. And I promise I'm going to admit these 3 people, and that is it. And then, unfortunately, we have to cut that short. Otherwise, I don't do justice to you guys. Right, so my disclaimer once again is that I don't have the magic wand. I think about life. I reflect a lot upon life and maybe overthink it to an extent. But the idea is to share with you different perspectives. Look at different perspectives between the cat on the left and the little baby on the right. And then to hopefully that will pave new insights, or pave the way for you to do things differently better in terms of what I will be able to share with you in these sessions. And please reflect. See where you think in relation to the content you can focus on most. So I want to kick off with vulnerability. That's, after all, the main reason why we are here. So in the traditional sense, that is the definition of vulnerability. The quality or state of being exposed to the possibility of being attacked or harmed, either physically or emotionally. Now, our discussion around vulnerability is something slightly different. It is more with the focus of the power of being vulnerable, and there's a slight difference. And I want to specifically say being psychologically vulnerable. I went to a business breakfast yesterday morning with a good friend of mine and a mentor of mine, and on my way there, I popped past the engine garage at Northcliffe Corner here on Bayswater in Joburg, and as I got out of my car, normal habit, I want to quickly tell the guy what he needs to do to my car. And immediately when he made eye contact, I saw something was different. And Pete pointed to his name tag. And it said, Pete, I'm deaf. Please be patient. Now, Pete obviously has some portion that he experiences of psychologically being invulnerable or invulnerable, or vulnerable then. But certainly from a physical point of view and physical interaction point of view, he is very vulnerable. I want to focus more on the psychological side today. And I want to warn you, I'm going to share and quote a lot of Brené Brown's work. She's a medical professor that specializes very much amongst others, and specifically in the topic of vulnerability. She knows her stuff, and she's written a lot of books on it. If you go to verywellmind.com, they tell us how to be vulnerable. And they also quote Brené Brown, by the way, you'll see there, as saying that vulnerability is an important measure of courage, and that it allows you to be seen and understood by the people who are important in your life. And then they carry on that Brené Brown says, being vulnerable serves as a way to foster authenticity, belongingness, and love, as opposed to us always think, people that are vulnerable are X, Y, and Z. And examples of being vulnerable: taking chances that might lead to rejection, and fair enough, it does take you out of your comfort zone. Talking about mistakes you've made. Being vulnerable in sharing your personal details that you normally keep private. Reconnecting with somebody else that you've fallen out with. Using the chance to reconnect and fix what needs to be fixed in your life. And then the last one they quote as being honest about what you need in a relationship, including your boundaries and expectations. And I would submit, especially important with your loved ones, the people that's part of your inner circle. In Brené Brown's book called Daring Greatly, and as I prepared for this, Marley, my wife, brought me the book last night. She quotes 3 misconceptions about vulnerability. And the first one is that, just give me a second. Just want to move this. First one is that it's a sign of weakness, which is absolutely nonsense. In fact, it's a sign of being courageous, being strong at times when it's needed. Second misconception is that I don't share my dirty laundry, and if I am being vulnerable, that is what I will do, which is not the case, because you can selectively decide when it's necessary to be or to become vulnerable. And the last one is I'm a loner. I can sort out my own stuff. I don't need anybody else. In other words, I don't need to share with anybody else what's going on in my life, which I think is an oversight, which I think is something that you do if you say and believe that you're doing an injustice to yourself, because we've got so many blind spots. And if we share when necessary, also to potentially assist other people, but in relation to ourselves, we can get other input, new perspectives that we can explore to our benefit and that of other people. So, quote from Brené Brown, vulnerability is not a weakness, it's our greatest measure of courage. So the question might be from your side, but Hekkie, when do you think I should encourage vulnerability in myself and in other people? Well, I think you need to be selective. I think when you truly believe that it would lead to the greater good. Do I, Hekkie, that went through a tough divorce 13 years ago, share my darkest, deepest thoughts that I had at points during that phase of my life with anybody and everybody? No, of course not. Do I share it when I think it can be and it can lead to the greater good? When I speak to somebody on the other side that's going through the same experience and it might assist them, if anything, to make them feel better? Absolutely, then I do that. And if we choose not to be vulnerable, by the way, in its worst form, we know we get to this. Across the world, 1 million people commit suicide, more or less, every year. Every 40 seconds. And we know men are much more prone, or double as, or rather 4 times as prone, depending on which stats you look at, 3 to 4 times more prone to commit suicide. And you might ask why, as a side note. Well, 2 reasons. And guys, don't crucify me for this. But I think, first of all, women are stronger than we are. We see it. I'm a mentor at the Character Company, where we raise boys that don't have positive male role models in their lives, and we mentor them. We see it in experiencing or seeing what the moms experience in their lives. Men just running away from their responsibility, and how strong women are. So I think that's the first reason. But I think the biggest reason is that men, especially, and it's more prevalent, I can tell you more in some cultures than other cultures, that men are too proud. It's something we're going to look at now, to share. I'm a man. I should be able to handle all of this. I must be strong. I can never be weak. And it's absolute bull dust.
In order for transformation to happen, in order for there to be success by any metric, money, stock price, market share, whatever your metric is, you can't get there without brave leaders and courageous cultures.
You can teach courage.
Oh, you can absolutely teach courage. 4 skill sets. Number 1 being vulnerability.
I bet you that not too many years ago, if you had corporate leaders talking about their vulnerability and discussing shame in the office place, they'd have been laughed out of the office.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's still the case in some places. It's just, if you're at the top of a Fortune 500 company and your success metric depends on creativity and innovation, and you've set up a culture where vulnerability is seen as weakness, don't expect great results.
Don't expect the creativity.
No, because, I mean, innovation by definition is idea, iteration, failure, iteration, failure, iteration. Places where they're doing the most remarkable kind of high risk, high reward, innovating, huge tolerances for vulnerability. And so if you have leaders who are either preaching a gospel of vulnerability as weakness or modeling that, just don't expect great things.
You have said that vulnerability without boundaries is not vulnerability. What do you mean by that? I'm not sure I understand.
When I go work with organizations, sometimes I'll hear someone say something like, how often should I cry in front of my team? And I'm like, oh my God, like, that's not what I'm saying. Vulnerability is not about, self-disclosure. Like, I know leaders who never cry, who are very vulnerable and transparent. And I know leaders who cry all the time who are just BSers. If there's, vulnerability is great. Faux vulnerability or like fake vulnerability, because vulnerability seems to be a thing right now, that pisses people off.
So you're not advocating for people to just put it all out there?
No, all I'm saying about vulnerability is that when you are in uncertainty, when you feel at risk, when you feel exposed, don't tap out. Stay brave, stay uncomfortable, stay in the cringy moment, lean into the hard conversation, and keep leading. Stay brave. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying you need to overshare. I'm not saying you need to disclose. I'm not saying you need to weep uncontrollably to show how human you are. I'm saying try to be aware of your armor. And when you feel vulnerable, try not to transform up. Try to stay human, keep leaning. Very different things.
So that gets me to the next point, which you touched on, organizational culture. And I just, as part of prepping, I saw this photo and I thought I just have to include it. Because your culture, not only as an organization, as a company, but also on a personal level, is your brand, right? In the MIT Sloan Management Review, I came across this. Toxic cultures that is driving great resignation. And this is a study they did, Sol and Swig, I think it is. Look at the bottom left, after the footnote 1. Between April and September 2021, more than 25 million American employees left their jobs, an all-time record. As the great resignation rolls on, business leaders are struggling to make sense of the factors driving this mass exodus. More importantly, they're looking for ways to hold onto their valued employees. Now look at the outcome of the research. So each of these bars indicates the level of importance of each topic for attrition relative to employee compensation. So the top one, and that's the one I want to focus on, talking about organizational culture. A toxic culture is 10.4 times more likely to contribute to attrition than compensation. Mind-boggling. And in the website fastcompany.com, and by the way, I will only share with you information that I absolutely believe are credible from credible websites. 16 signs of a toxic work environment. Number 14 reads, fear of speaking candidly, fear of having the courage to say what I actually want to say. Number 15, hesitancy to ask challenging questions. I'm too scared. And part of it might be, yes, that I am by nature too scared to ask questions, bearing in mind that the only stupid question that's ever been asked is the one that's not been asked. I'm the stupid guy, and I don't mind that. I'm the stupid guy in public forums that always ask the question that I actually know of the folks around me also don't know the answer of. I'm the stupid guy that raises my hand. I don't mind. There's no such thing as a stupid question. That's part of it, yes. But your corporate culture, your organizational culture might not be supportive of you wanting to ask the challenging questions. LionDavy.com. Very recently updated. Look there on the right. February 20th, 2024. Environment, your ultimate guide to navigating a toxic environment or workplace. They start by describing what is organizational culture. And by the way, that's as simple as the simplest form of describing culture is in organization is the way we do things around here. And here are a few signs of a toxic culture. Resistance to new people and rejection of ideas that disrupt the status quo. Second one, zeros and heroes, where some people have clout and others are ignored. Third one, passive-aggressive behavior such as gossip, undermining, sarcasm. Fourth one is office politics and opaque back-channel influence strategies. Relentless positivity, rather, number 5, and unwillingness to tolerate dissent or disagreement. All 5 of these signs of toxic culture falls into one of the categories that I'm going to share with you today. One of the 4 categories. And that leads us to pride. That leads us to pride. Another Brené Brown quote. Vulnerability is the first thing I look for in you, and the last thing I'm willing to show you as an individual. Typically, that I am too proud. Here's the definition. We know the definition. Feeling or showing pride such as having or displaying excessive self-esteem. You know people like that? In a book called Finishing Strong that I read, I finished it during COVID time. And by the way, I think it's legal. Otherwise, I won't be doing it. I've got a PDF copy of the book if you are interested. I've shared it with some of you on this session. In this session, please give me a shot. Drop me a note and I'll send it to you via WhatsApp. Great read. I can recommend it. But Steve Ferrer refers to pride and the dangers of being too proud 364 times. In preparing, once again, I came across this Mind Journal quote. If you're ever too proud to say sorry, you have bigger issues than an apology. And that brings me to another, by the way. Who do you respect more? The leader or somebody to look up to specifically that says, I'm sorry, I stuffed up. I've learned from it. I won't do it again. Can you forgive me or do you accept my apology? Or that guy that suffers from pride. Everybody knows he's stuffed up. I almost said another word. But he's too proud to admit. And as a result, he's causing the environment to be toxic. Once again, getting back to the culture and the second topic we discussed. Last topic, psychological safety. Critical.
One of the biggest questions is how to build the perfect team. And in fact, about 4 years ago, Google invited me to come spend some time with them because they were in the middle of a big project called Project Aristotle, a huge data study to try and figure out how to build the perfect team at Google. Initially, their hypothesis was that the best teams are teams where you put people together who like each other, right? Maybe you need a good mix of extroverts and introverts. Maybe you need people who are friends away from the conference room. And so they looked at the data and they did experiments and they found that who was on a team actually didn't matter at all. They couldn't find any correlations between team membership and team success. So then they started looking at how a team interacts. And this is where suddenly everything became clear. Because what they found is that the people who are on a team matter much, much less than how those people interact. That you could have enemies on a team together, or you could have strangers or friends or people who don't get along or all introverts or all extroverts. And as long as they treat each other a certain way, as long as there's a certain culture, then that team will gel. So as they started looking at these behaviors, what they found was that there were 2 in particular that mattered more than anything else. The first was called equality in conversational turn-taking. During a meeting or a set of meetings, if everyone speaks at roughly the same amount, then that team is much more likely to succeed. But just speaking isn't actually enough. The second characteristic that teams need in order to do well is called ostentatious listening. That basically, in addition to encouraging you to talk more, I, as a team leader or team member, have to show you that I'm listening by doing things like repeating what you just told me or closing my computer so I can make eye contact with you. If you have these two characteristics, conversational turn-taking and ostentatious listening, it creates what psychologists refer to as psychological safety. And psychological safety is shown as the single greatest correlate with a group's success. When a group feels like they are psychologically safe with each other, you unlock their best ideas, their ability to work together, their innovative capacities. Google's fundamental belief, as is true for many other companies, is that it's only when a team comes together that you actually get the best ideas out of each person and the best work at getting things done.
Now, if you go to the Harvard Business Review website, you'll find this blog. What is psychological safety? I love the picture on the right because I don't think that fish feel psychologically safe. So they're saying that team psychological safety is a shared belief held by members of a team that it's okay to take risks, to express their ideas and concerns, to speak up with questions, and to admit mistakes. Very importantly, the next phrase, all without fear of negative consequences. All without fear of negative consequences. Center of Creative Leadership, worldwide leadership development organization, do great work. They say psychological safety at work doesn't mean that everybody is nice to each other all the time. It means that people feel free to brainstorm out loud, voice half-finished thoughts, openly challenge the status quo, share feedback, and work through disagreements together. And they say there are 8 steps towards creating to more psychological safety. Making it an explicit priority. Facilitating everyone to speak up in meetings, for example, going back to what Joel said in the video. Establishing norms for how failure is handled. Don't nail somebody. It's okay if we fail. We learn from it and we move on. Create space for new ideas, even wild ones. Embracing productive conflict. Pay close attention and look for patterns. I'm seeing some people are getting quiet. So is there something we can do about it? Or they may be psychologically unsafe. Number 7, make an intentional effort to promote dialogue. And very importantly, last one is celebrate wins. So ladies and gents, I'm finishing off. Vulnerability, in my mind, company or organizational culture, pride, and psychological safety are concepts that go hand in hand. You might recall 6 to 9 months ago, I think it was, somebody on one of these webinars asked me, what happens, Hekkie, if I'm in a toxic environment at work? Well, my advice to her was, be the change you wish to see in this world. And if you try your best and you don't see anything happens, even though you promote the things or not that we discussed today, I want to say to you, it might sound controversial, but if you don't run, you're going to be unhappy for the rest of your life. So I wish and I hope and I believe that you will be promoting vulnerability, that you will work towards and take the lead around building a non-toxic, productive, positive organizational culture, that you will address issues of pride where you see that it's happening, and that you certainly will promote psychological safety wherever you go. I wrote a book on this stuff if you're interested, talking about being vulnerable. I'm being vulnerable now to say to you, sorry, I probably didn't mess up, but this was an oversight on my side for all the stuff that's going on. I didn't update our website, but I will do that in the next week and talk to my IT guy. But on the 26th of April, we are discussing how to improve motivation, because everything in my mind starts with motivation. If I'm motivated, then it will lead me to make the right choices. And if I can back that up by following a disciplined lifestyle in order to execute those choices, it will get me to achieve the goals that I would like to achieve at work and at home. Ladies and gents, that's the end. Thank you. There's all my details. If you haven't invited me to join your LinkedIn network, please do so. And on that note, I'm going to stop sharing for us to field a couple of questions. I see it is 2028. Any questions? Hekkie talked a lot of nonsense, absolutely rubbish. I hope not. But if you do think or feel that way, please voice it right now. Anything that anybody would like to add? Is that useful? Was that useful? Can you apply the tools and methods and techniques that I very briefly touched on? And there are many more around the topics that we covered.
Hekkie, thank you. It was very useful. Actually, one of my coaching clients this week, she's working at a big company, bank, and after a session with her team, she realized she needs to be more vulnerable, but that doesn't make her less of a leader. I think John Maxwell said one day, I can't remember the precise words, was the moment the leader realizes that he's walking with faulty shoes, he becomes more of a leader to his team. So, and hand in hand with that is authenticity. So choosing authenticity means cultivating the courage to be imperfect, to set boundaries, and to allow ourselves to be vulnerable.
Yeah, absolutely. Transparency, authenticity. Yeah, thanks for those insights and those pieces of wisdom. Absolutely agree with that. Thank you very much. Also for breaking the silence, by the way, after I asked if there are any questions. Any last question? We are 1 minute in. I see the comments in the chat box. I can't get to all of it. I apologize for that, but thank you for that one that just came through. Ladies and gents, I wish you all the best. Have a super weekend, and that's the nice thing of doing this on Fridays. Unfortunately, I'm going to take a short break. There's public holidays, and I'm swimming a race in Franschhoek area next week, end of next week. Looking forward to the session with you in April. And please, please send me topics that you would like me to discuss and cover, because after 17 of these, you start to run out of ideas. So I would appreciate your input as far as that's concerned. Have a lovely one and a good one. Look after yourselves till we meet again. Thanks, Bonnie. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.